Y'all can have a seat. Stay warm. Cuddle up in your blanket. So today is the why of the church. And the why of the church is actually the theme of today's Sunday as well, which is testify. So I'm going to read out of the book of John, chapter 4. We're going to read a few verses there. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to testify. And then we're going to let Callie come forth and actually put that into action for us. So we're in John chapter 4, verses 4 through 11. And this is the NIV version. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water?" As I mentioned, our text today has been chosen to fit what is our fifth Sunday, our first fifth Sunday of the year. Also, Flip-Flop Sunday. Got my flip-flops on. The fifth and final message in our series that's been the month of May. The who, the what, the where, the when, and now the why of church. Today concludes with the why, and our text follows the pattern set by the first 4 weeks of our month. It was cut to speak life into those who are here and who will watch this message at this particular place, at this particular time. If we can consider where our text begins and ends, we can get a fuller picture of the Samaritan woman and her story. The Samaritan woman who encountered Jesus, how her life was forever changed. And not only was her life changed, but the lives of others would be as well. While we begin reading in verse 4 for today, we also need to consider verses 1 through 3. Jesus had learned that the Pharisees have heard he was gaining more disciples. They also believed that Jesus was the one who was baptizing these disciples, when in fact it was his disciples doing the baptizing. Based on verse 1 in John chapter 4, it seems the concern stems from the fact that soon Jesus will have accumulated many more disciples and followers than John. There seems to be a conflict here. So, Jesus makes the decision to leave Judea and goes back once more to Galilee. When we reconsider the beginning of our text, we get a glimpse of the mindset that Jesus is in when he reaches Samaria, when he reaches that well. Perhaps we can say as, "for such a time as this." So far, our text is saying that Jesus has worn down from being browbeaten by the Pharisees. Yet again, he has an encounter with them that is negative. They're jealous, petty, and controlling. Jesus has been cool, but there's no longer any trust there. He sees his efforts to meet them where they are and invite them upward in faith are in vain, based on the pattern of their interactions. So Jesus steps away. We meet Jesus as the text tells us he has to journey through Samaria to reach his chosen destination of Galilee. As we read verses 4 through 11, we see that Jesus has a detailed route and destination in mind. Yet it's the direction that will bring about the destiny of one unnamed woman. The town of Sychar and the area surrounding it are explained a bit further here to provide details on the well of Jacob. Jesus is tired and sits down at that particular well. We find out it was just around noon. It was the hottest part of the day to be traveling. And one could think, okay, yeah, Jesus is there. That makes sense. He's on his way. He's just passing through. Then, a Samaritan woman approaches the well to draw water. Why would she be out now? Jesus asks for a drink as his disciples have gone into town. Our woman is confused as to why Jesus is even speaking to her. She's a Samaritan, and he is Jewish. Jesus answers and highlights a direction of God that is living water. Skeptical, the woman highlights a detail of her own. She notes and speaks that Jesus has nothing to draw water with, and that well is really, really deep. She sees no way for Jesus to retrieve this living water. And oh, by the way, Jesus, you asked me for a drink. Let's look a little deeper at that request made by Jesus for a drink. From the eyes of our Samaritan woman. Is that person sitting by the well? No one is ever out here at this time of day. That's why I chose it. I'm not one to want to make conversation. I really just want to get my water and get back on with it. He's probably going to question me anyway, judge me, condemn me. Sick of it. Well, I still need water. This man just asked me for a drink of water. He's a Jew. Jews don't talk to Samaritans. Now he's rambling about some gift of God and living water. He wants to give that to me. Yeah, right. Where's your bucket? This well is deep. From Jesus' perspective, it goes a little differently. What a journey. I couldn't get through to them. It isn't about me. It isn't about John. It's about my Father and the work that he sent me here to do. Without him, I can do nothing. But they can't see that. Their eyes are wide shut. I'll just sit here at this well while the disciples go for food. Is that a woman approaching? Oh, the Samaritan woman. Oh gosh, no one would be out at this time of day unless they were trying to avoid people. Let's see what happens. I'm really very thirsty. Excuse me, could you give me a drink? I mean, I don't care that she's Samaritan, but she seems surprised that I talked to her. Bless her heart. She's so defensive and untrusting. If only she knew the gift of my Father that is living water. Hey, I can offer that to you. I don't even need a bucket or a rope, for the well from which it comes is divinely accessible. The woman said, you have no bucket to draw water, Jesus. She doesn't say Jesus. She doesn't know who it is. But God. There's a detail there. That's where her mind goes. We can see here how pinpointing just the details and honing in on them alone, attempting to compare and contrast, can lead us to miss who's sitting next to us. Jesus says, give me a drink. Some people imagine that God is most glorified when human participation is excluded. Yet, Jesus did not diminish his glory one bit by asking for help and cooperation from that Samaritan woman. As it worked towards the accomplishment of this divine purpose, the Father and the Son were most glorified in the display of love and grace and goodness to the woman at the well. Jesus is not unaware that the way to gain a soul is often to ask service of it. In all this situation, we've seen many paradoxes in Jesus' work. He who gives rest is now seen as weary. He who is Israel's Messiah speaks to a Samaritan woman. He who has living water asks for a drink from a well. He felt that his miraculous power was to be used for others, and in his great work, his humanity must bear on its own. It must support its own trials. So he reserves his hand from relieving his own needs. Because of the cross, because of Jesus' sacrifice in doing so, we can hone that power through testimony. There's every reason to believe that the woman at the well gave Jesus what he asked for. And then she asks the question of John chapter 4, verse 9. How can you ask me for a drink? This particular question spurs her forward into a string of questions that follow. The line of questioning here can often seem inconsistent. It's like our woman at the well is hearing without really listening. She asks questions that are already premeditated and predetermined. No matter the answer, she's going to ask the next question. It's as if she learned to be defensive in a way that prepares her for whatever is to come, to handle things on her own. No matter the context, even when it's the Messiah sitting at the well next to her, her content is the same. Our precious woman is preparing to defend rather than for discernment. This particular text invites us into that discernment, to step into our own testimony of our own encounter with the living Messiah. It's one thing to know about Jesus. It's a completely different thing to have encountered him. And when we encounter him, we can be assured that we are transformed. And that transformation turns into testimony. And that testimony becomes our why of church. Reconsidering where our text ends for today, we have to observe verse 28. Verse 28 is the why. Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people. We stop it here just shy of verse 29. Because that is the object of testimony. Testifying often begins with a question. It leads to an answer from Jesus. Then our commitment to embrace his presence and go forth to share the good news. I actually preached this same text on my second trip to Regeneration a little over a year ago. That seemingly small detail is monumentally important today because it shows how testimony can reach anyone at any particular time. Repeating it over and over allows God to go forth in abundantly new and exciting ways. When we share our faith, when we embrace the why of church, and when we testify to the goodness of God, it touches people right where they are, even if the same words have been used before. The punctuation in that verse 28 that we mentioned is a comma. We stopped it there because the next verse takes us from direction to detail, and sometimes we get lost in the details. Our testimony is using the direction of our lives, submitted to Jesus, to allow others to find the details for themselves. My details aren't your details, but our direction is the same. My destination may not be your destination, but our destinies are the same. We are called to grace and to love and to serve in our faith and to testify. There's so many ways to testify. From healing to feeding to walking to celebrating to flip-flopping, each detail present in our testimony should seek to show more of who God is. Based on our story for today, we should almost plan to have pit stops around and about our life to do so. Places where we can sit at a well around 12. Somewhere no one expected us to be, in order to reach those who believed they were unreachable, to touch those who thought they were untouchable, and to pour into the lives of those who thought they were full already. To testify is to rise up in faith and share what the Lord has done and what the Lord continues to do, reaching with intention and serving to empower. We find our why when we testify. So now you've heard the word of God go forth this morning. And now we're going to hear from one of my favorite people at Regeneration regarding her encounter with God, her why. I invite you to listen with a heart that isn't simply prepared to respond, but a heart that is prepared to receive. Receive the details of her experience, and then search your spirit for your own. I invite you today into the presence of Jesus, our who, with the prayer for a pop in your faith, our what, that provides direction, our where, for such a time as this, our when, all of the church, all of our faith, so that your why may take root today, and you too can go forth and testify. Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, Callie, will you come share with us?